probably faced situations where a project slowed down, not because of the plan, but because people weren't aligned. Maybe someone didn't feel included, or a decision was delayed because a stakeholder hadn't been consulted. That's where the stakeholder management cycle comes in. But what is the stakeholder management cycle? Managing internal stakeholders is not a one-time task, it's a process. And like any good process, it has clear steps that you can follow. This process is called the stakeholder management cycle. It helps you approach internal collaboration in a structured, consistent, and effective way. Internal stakeholder collaboration rarely works well without structure. Teams are busy, priorities shift, and misunderstandings happen easily. That's why organizations need a clear cycle to guide engagement. The stakeholder management cycle gives you as a procurement professional a step-by-step method to ensure your stakeholders are not only informed, but also involved, aligned, and empowered to contribute. The structured approach replaces guesswork with strategy. It helps you avoid missed expectations, late feedback, or disengaged stakeholders who were brought in too late. In this lesson, we will introduce you to the full cycle. Throughout this course, we will explore each step in more detail. There are 4 key steps in the cycle. The first one is identifying stakeholders. Before you can work with others, you need to know who they are. This first step involves identifying everyone who is affected by your procurement project or who can influence its success. Try not to make assumptions. Talk to others, review past projects, and ask questions like, who will need to use this product or service? Who signs off the budget? And who has technical requirements? The next step is analyzing stakeholders. Once you know who your stakeholders are, you need to gain a deeper understanding of them. This step helps you to answer questions like, what are their goals and concerns? What level of influence do they have? And how interested or involved will they be? You can use tools like the Influence Interest Matrix or stakeholder maps to help visualize your findings. The goal is to understand what matters most to each person and to determine the most effective way to involve them. Those 2 steps we're going to explain and discuss in Module 2. The third step is planning engagement. After you've identified and analyzed your stakeholders, it's time to plan how you will engage with them. This plan should answer questions like, how often should we meet? What is the best way to communicate? Are there any risks we need to manage? And what are responsibilities? These steps helps you stay proactive and consistent in your communication and collaboration. This step we are going to discuss in Module 3. And the last step is managing and monitoring. This is where the plan becomes reality. You begin working with stakeholders, holding meetings, sharing updates, collecting feedback, and collaborating to solve problems together. But it doesn't stop there. You also need to monitor the relationships regularly. Are stakeholders still engaged? Are their expectations changing? Or do you need to adjust your approach? Continuous improvement is key. When you notice a gap or issue, respond early. Stakeholder management is a living process, not something you do once. This step of the cycle we will explain in Module 4. The stakeholder management cycle, when done well, creates value, encourages collaboration, and leads to strong and better business needs for you and your company. Remember the example from the first lesson about the TCO strategy for corporate cars? That's a great case where we followed all the steps of the cycle. We identified stakeholders like, for example, HR, the policy team, and car users from across the business. We analyzed their needs, understood what was working and what the pain points were, and we created a clear engagement plan with ways of working, regular meetings, a Raki matrix, and a communication strategy. And we actively monitored the project and shared progress through KPIs. Because every step of the cycle is done properly, we reached our goals and delivered success. But what happens if the cycle is done poorly? Let's look at an example where things didn't go as planned. A manufacturing company had a project to qualify an alternative supplier for a critical packaging material used in a top-selling food project. This material originated from a single source with patented technology, making it a high-risk investment. The company decided to qualify another plant as a backup. The procurement person leading the project made a few key mistakes. First, she treated all stakeholders the same. She didn't properly assess who had high power and low interest. Those people needed to be managed carefully. She also missed some key high power, high interest stakeholders who could have helped but weren't included early on. In the engagement phase, she held joint meetings, presented objectives and timelines, but didn't ask for feedback or talk about risks. There was no Raki, no alignment, and no clear approvals. The project moved forward and appeared to be on track until the final step. A critical stakeholder with high power but low interest kept delaying the production trials. Since the project lacked proper governance and escalation procedures, everything stalled. Then just 1 month later, the main supplier faced technical issues and was unable to deliver packaging materials right in the peak season. Because the backup supplier hadn't been qualified in time, the company was unable to produce or ship the product. This caused serious financial losses. So, what went wrong then? Poor stakeholder identification and analysis, weak engagement and communication, and no governance or escalation strategy. This example illustrates why every step in the stakeholder cycle is crucial. Missing just one part can have serious consequences for your success and your business success. The stakeholder management cycle is based on principles from project management, change management, and stakeholder theory. Frameworks like those from the Project Management Institute, PMI, and Freeman's stakeholder theory emphasize the importance of early involvement, mutual understanding, and adaptive communication. Without this structured process, you risk misalignment between your team and other internal functions, which can lead to project delays, poor supplier decisions, or business needs. Let's look at these steps not just as actions, but as mindsets that you need to develop. Identifying stakeholders involves more than just listing names. It's about developing awareness of the broader system. Ask yourself, who has knowledge I might be missing? Who will care about the outcome later? Involving the right people early often prevent issues later. Analyzing stakeholders requires empathy and curiosity. You're not just categorizing people, you're learning what drives them. If you know what success looks like for them, you can align your goals way more easily. The steps helps turns the resistance into support. Planning engagement means making collaborations feel intentional. It's about designing how the relationship will work. Will this person want regular updates? Should I request feedback in writing or in person? Etc. Managing and monitoring are about maintaining active and healthy relationships. It's not just checking off tasks. It's noticing when people disengages or when something's not working and adjusting your approach before small issues become big ones. When organizations skip or rush through this cycle, they often face avoidable problems. Projects get delayed because the right people weren't consulted, suppliers are selected solely based on price, and stakeholders lose trust in procurement, seeing it as isolated or reactive. Many of these issues aren't technical, they're relational. That's why applying the stakeholder cycle consistently helps you to transform procurement from a transactional function into a collaborative business driver. When done well, the stakeholder management cycle leads to improvements across your team, but also the broader organization. Here's why each benefit is crucial and how the cycle helps to achieve it. Stronger collaboration between teams, better alignment on goals, fewer misunderstandings and delays, and more sustainable results. When you begin using this cycle in your daily work, you'll likely see changes in how stakeholders respond to your procurement initiatives. People want to be heard, involved, and valued. When stakeholders feel their input is acknowledged and reflected in decisions, they become more engaged and cooperative. This leads to fewer misunderstandings, stronger alignment, and better project outcomes. Over time, the more consistently you apply this framework, the easier it becomes to build trust and form long-term internal partnerships that support strategic procurement goals. The team of Procurement Tactics created a template for you to think about: did you go through each step of the stakeholder management cycle in your latest projects? Which steps felt strong and which ones might have been rushed or skipped altogether? Successful stakeholder management is a result of following a complete and consistent process. Skipping steps or rushing through them often leads to failure. By reflecting on how well you followed the cycle, you'll gain insights into what's working for you and where you need to improve. Write down one step where you think you could improve and how that would have helped the outcome. Now that you've seen the full stakeholder cycle, it's time to break the separated steps down further. In the next module, we will explore how to identify internal stakeholders and why getting the step right makes everything else easier. See you there!